My name is Angelica Groves, and my presentation will be covering the current legal issues of concussions in collegiate football and the various laws that can positively and negatively impact their business, which in this case will be the NCAA. Abundant information on the dangers of concussions has been available for decades. Despite knowledge of the dangers, sport organizations and individuals have regularly acted contrary to the best interests of the athlete. Player as plaintiff litigations is on the rise across sports, and concussions litigations in collegiate athletics has led the trend. Importantly, against the backdrop of evolving medical research and increasing demands for player safety, individual collegiate concussion cases are progressing faster than large class actions against the NCAA that have been lingering for years. Currently, the NCAA is facing more than 300 lawsuits from former college football players who claim their concussions were mistreated, leading to medical problems spanning from headaches to depression to seizures, and in some cases early onset Parkinson's or Alzheimer's disease. So what exactly is a concussion? A concussion is a traumatic brain injury occurring when the brain impacts the interior of the skull due to violent head movement or a blow to the head. Following a concussion, the brain is extremely vulnerable for a period of time. Some symptoms include headaches, dizziness, confusion, amnesia, and heightened emotion. So some quick facts regarding the NCAA and concussions. Went too fast. College athletes suffered an average of 10,500 concussions for the past 5 years, of which approximately 3,400 occurred in football. According to the Atlantic Constitution analysis of Division I, II, and III schools, found that about one out of 6 athletic programs do not count student-athlete concussions by sport, even though such data collections can lead to better safety protocols for their athletes. The NCAA's concussion guidelines, adopted in 2010, left it up to the schools who would diagnose concussions, and it allowed people who weren't medically professionals to clear players to return to play. So a specific scenario, as I mentioned recently, there has been a lot of lawsuits brought against the NCAA by former football players who have suffered personal injuries due to multiple concussions. The former players claims the long-term effects of concussions they endured while playing collegiate sports were due largely to negligence and lack of proper concussion protocols by NCAA and institutions. So a research question could be, who is responsible for the harm caused by the tort conduct that injures a student athlete and has the potential to have a long-term effect on the athlete? Well, first, let's learn a little bit about tort law. Tort law is a wrong, a careless, or intentional act which causes harm to another. There's 3 types of tort laws. Negligence, which is a failure to act in a way that protects others from reasonable harm. 2, reckless behavior falls between carelessness of negligence and deliberate nature of an intentional act. And intentional tort, which is civil wrongs knowingly committed. So negligence behavior, what determines negligence is duty of care, breach of duty, causation, and damages. Perhaps the causation law is the most difficult to prove. This element involves a connection between the defendant's failure to follow responsibilities and the plaintiff's injury. The plaintiff must prove that the NCAA, the member institution, or some combination caused that harm and has some legal duty to the plaintiff and breach that duty. The key difference between an intentional tort and a negligence tort is the actor's state of mind. A person who is negligent did not intend it to cause harm, but they are still legally held responsible because their careless actions injured someone. The defendants in this case, which would be the NCAA, can claim that they are not liable for the injuries the athletes suffer because of the assumption of risk. An athlete which is the plaintiff, makes the decision to partake in an activity that could potentially be dangerous, and by choosing to participate, you assume some sort of risk. So a defense against an assumption of risk claim, the plaintiff may assume the inherent risk by participating in the sport. However, negligence was not under the assumed risk. Some current legal issues. Example is Ploez versus the NCAA and Adrian Ardington. So Ploez versus the NCAA, the widow of Greg Ploez, a Texas linebacker who played in 1968, 1969, and 1971, sued the NCAA in Texas after doctors examined Ploez's brain and concluded he had stage 4 CTE. The NCAA argued, among other things, that it could not be liable for Ploez's injuries and death because he knew that playing football carried an inherent risk of suffering hits to the head. However, the NCAA entered into a confidential settlement with Ploez's widow midway through trial. Although the settlement left the legal issues in the case unresolved, the fact of the settlement may embolden player plaintiffs to file more lawsuits and make more aggressive settlement demands. Again, we pose the question, who is responsible for the harm caused by the tort conduct that injures a student athlete and has the potential to have a long-term effect on the athlete, and what policies and protocols can be implemented to decrease the number of concussions we see in the sport of football. In my opinion, I do believe that the NCAA institutions need to take more accountability in the way that they handle concussions. I feel like a lot of other injuries gets taken a lot more seriously than concussions. Many sports organizations fail to treat concussions with the seriousness it deserves by utilizing insufficient return to play policies, failure to properly educate athletes, coaches, trainers of risks and symptoms of concussions. To the right, I found this chart that is concussion management. So this breaks down the percentage of who's responsible for returning athletes to play post-concussion, and then suggestions to improve. I thought this was a great visual to see the percentages of who's responsible in ways that we can do better. Here are my references, and that's all that I have.